It is episode 105. That means for 105 days we have been going live daily, and I have been bringing to you from whenever that started, late June or something like that, my thoughts and my assessments about what we need here in Saint Croix in our riding, from Macadam to Campobello, and from Saint Croix River to Digdeguash River, everywhere in between. We have specific things that we need to see delivered. There is an erosion of trust in our government, and I want to restore that. Now, this comes with kind of two facets, okay? And it is election season, and if you are at all paying attention, you are seeing the parties roll out different, they're called promises, I guess. I hesitate to use that word, not because I don't plan to work. You know that I do plan to work on all of these things. I want you to understand the 5 needs that I perceive in St. Croix. Yesterday, I talked about how it is an issue of safety. That is why on all my signs going up around the riding, you will see the commitment to feeling safe and bringing safety so that we can thrive. I do believe, as I mentioned yesterday, that we are depending on our government to provide those basic needs, as I mentioned yesterday in Maslow's, those physiological and safety needs at a bare minimum. And so when we don't feel like those things are being delivered, we get worried, and we're not thriving. We're not doing well. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was you're seeing parties, the leaders, in our case for the Greens, David Kuhn, providing ideas, providing solutions for what we would like to see implemented across the province. And so, in our system, of course, you are going to vote for your local candidate that is a member of the party that you would like to see form government. Okay. I'm getting ready to do an interview at the high school this Thursday, and I don't want to take for granted that anybody, whether, the person is 15 or 16 or 75 or 76, that we know exactly what we are doing. Now, there is that conundrum that a lot of people are wondering about. Oh man, I have to vote for this person who I like, but I'm wondering about having confidence in that party or that leader forming government. And I have made a video on why you should not think about voting for someone locally who you do not think is the strongest person. There's a whole host of reasons around that. If you think I should do a video on that again, let me know. But what I want to talk about today is how those parties and the leaders are making announcements that will likely have a provincial impact. And what you need to know as a voter is how your MLA, if that person you vote for locally, how we are going to take. So in our case, when David Kuhn makes a statement about, for example, restoring rural infrastructure in general, this is something that I'm so thrilled, as I mentioned last week after the announcement. That is a general idea that we want to see the government, which is in Fredericton and all too often disconnected from the needs on the ground. And if you don't have an MLA in Fredericton advocating for the granular needs, those specific things that make us feel safe in our riding, again, Macadam to Campobello and east to west, then that will slip through the cracks. So the leader can make some grand statement, but it is up to the MLA to make sure that they are making enough noise and waving their hands and at the table saying, how are you going to make a difference to my neighbors, my constituents in my riding? So it is not enough for you to just hear a leader make a broad promise or even have the MLA, the candidate, kind of standing by and not showing that they are going to be the ones to go up to Fredericton, to come back, to listen, to go to Fredericton, to have ideas, to be networking and talking with the decision makers. That's why I was so glad last week when David Kuhn made his announcement and stepped aside, and I got to speak to the media for 2 to 3 minutes, whatever it was, talking about why Campobello needs a ferry and the specific stories around that, and why we need a courthouse and the specific effects that will have and the fallout that has happened from not having that. David Kuhn understands that only an MLA that is knocking on doors, a candidate that is knocking on doors, knows exactly what this riding needs. And so over the next, I'm kind of kicking off today because I officially got my nomination papers in and I voted for myself at the returning office in St. Stephen. Yes, I'm just going to come out and say it. I know it's a secret ballot and all that, but I voted for myself today. So my voting period is done. Now I'm just going to be running as flat out as I can until October 21st. And essentially today what I'm doing is kicking off a new phase, I would say, of these videos where I want to start sharing with you, if you're not plugged in necessarily to the Green Party news or the major media outlets, and sometimes on Twitter you'll see certain reporters listing out all of the promises that the leaders are making. But again, a lot of people feel promises, promises. How does that translate to me where I live? And especially, how is the candidate aware of those promises and willing to advocate and champion the way that those promises can be implemented and make life better for our common good right here where we live? So I have the entire platform, as it's called, the series of promises that the party has been working on all this year. And it has to be costed, which is another thing that maybe you don't know. You can't just say a whole bunch of things. You have got to, by law, actually create a budget, figure out how much these things cost. So when we announced a year-round provincially funded ferry, that has to be costed. You have to reach out to the provider and find out exactly how much that costs. Sometimes those numbers aren't exactly right at our fingertips. When you talk about housing solutions, you have to find out exactly how much that'll cost. When we talk about relief for hydro bills or rental caps and things like that, we have to figure out how much that will cost. And so this is not just, as some accuse progressive ideas of just promising the world and not having any way of implementing that. Our conservative government right now, their idea is to cut the sales tax by 2%. And as we've said before, that's $500 million less of our revenues, which is why traditionally and typically conservative governments are the ones who run deficits and run us into debt. So more about that tomorrow, because the first thing I want to talk about is a hydro-related promise or commitment, and how will that affect people in Saint Croix? How will that affect you? Sometimes a commitment is made by the party that every New Brunswicker will benefit from, and therefore that will be Saint Croix as well. Specific people of certain income brackets might benefit, but then also other times it will be very specific. So, for example, a commitment to rural services means a courthouse back in Charlotte County. A commitment to rural services means a ferry for Campobello. So sometimes it'll be very specific. So like I say, this is shifting into a new phase. I will continue to talk about my 5 priorities when I'm your MLA. How am I going to, on October 22nd, start picking up the phone, making phone calls, and advocating for our riding? You should know both the promises that are being made and how they will be kept and implemented by your candidate and by your MLA. So thanks for joining me for this new season. I will be continuing to knock on doors and coming to you every day with